Perfect. Yes, so welcome everyone. So 15 people already here. For the rest, they will join shortly, but I think we can just hop right in. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining this amazing opportunity to learn and hear a lot of stories from Johan. And I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell during his long time in the tech industry with a lot of different experiences. So I'm really looking forward to that. For the beginning, for everyone who's not aware of what Malt actually is, go Johan. Nice. So you get already motivation speak from the crowd. So a few words on Malt for all of you who are not so familiar with what we are and what we do. So my name is Pascal. I'm the head of freelance community here in the DACH region for Malt. Few words about Malt, then the tech talk around 40-45 minutes, and then we have enough time for Q&A. So that's just for the agenda. But what is Malt? So we are a marketplace for freelance consultants. So basically everyone who wants to work as freelance, especially in the in the field of tech, digital, all related to that, with this profiles, you can just go on www.malt.de or .com and basically create a free profile for you as a freelancer. And what we want to offer you once you joined our community is that we believe in the power of choice. So the choice for you to choose who you want to work with which clients you want to work with, what conditions you want to work with them, what are the basic framework that you want to work with them, the time and the place where you want to work. So choice is everything that we want to strive for and to enable you to choose all basically your whole freelancer working lifestyle. A few numbers about Malt so you get a little bit of understanding. So we're basically more or less not a startup anymore. So we're really in a scale-up phase. So we were founded in 2013 in France, in Paris. So it's a nice coincidence that we have Johan here telling you guys how he started actually in Paris as well. So we have some similarities here. And through the time, we accumulated and I think the number is growing month by month, around 380,000 freelancers that we have across all these markets that you can see here. We have more than 50,000 clients with us, working together with us and finding freelancers on our marketplace. Last year, we've got the latest funding round with 112 million for basically growth in new markets. And yeah, we're in Germany since 2019. So Germany, more or less, really a startup with around 20 people, but in France, for sure, a lot bigger, more or less 10 times. And yeah, more than 50,000 clients. So we're working with big companies, like big names that you can find on the slide. We're working with German Mittelstand. We are also working with scale-ups and late stage startups as well. So this is really the base from young and digital companies up to the corporates that everyone knows of. And the reason, and that's really the last slide, and then I don't want to talk about Malt anymore, but let Johan take over, is why is Malt special for freelancers? So with us, you have a guaranteed payment of getting paid after 5 days, 5 working days after you finished a project with one of our clients. You can simply manage all administrative tasks, like from sending offers to the clients with a few clicks, automatically sending invoices once you say, I finished my project, automatically send the invoice to the client, get paid by us, the client pays us. You are insured for all the projects that you do over Malt. You can build a fast reputation with that, because if you do more and more projects on Malt, you get more exposure and you get listed more on the top of the search results from our clients. And yeah, then in the end, if it works out, if you have a good reputation, a good profile, and we can for sure help you with that as well, you get more and more requests from the clients directly. So you just need to create your profile, and we will match you with the clients and with the projects coming from the clients. And we only send you the projects that are really interesting and matching your profile, and you don't need to search for them, or you don't get spammed by any projects, but just the ones that are really relevant for you. And one important thing to mention is that we have a community first approach. So you, the freelancers, are really at the core of our business and the core of our activities. And we as the community team are trying to build the bigger community also here in Germany, with a lot of live events, with a lot of virtual events like the webinar we're doing today with Johan, to bring you guys more together, share experiences, also give you the stage. So if you want to talk about a topic such as Johan is doing today, just contact us, let us know if you have something important to say, an expert in a certain field. Just let us know, and then we can talk about maybe doing a webinar or a live event or workshop or whatever the format would be best for the topic, and yeah, give you more or less a stage where you can share your experiences that might be valuable for others, that may be a little bit earlier in the freelancer journey and can take something out of that. And yeah, that is what Malt is, what we do. And as said, building the community and giving you guys experiences and yeah, learnings, insights from more experienced freelancers, maybe such as Johan, or more experienced people in the, especially now today from the tech industry. I will stop talking and yeah, directly hand over to Johan. And first of all, thanks, Johan, for joining. It's a pleasure to have you today, and to tell us a little bit about your experiences we called it from software engineer to CTOs to investor. So you can see a lot of different roads that you had, and I'm really curious to see what you can share with us, what you learned during that time. And to all of you guys, whenever you have questions that you want to address to Johan, on the lower right-hand side, you have these different tabs like chat, questions, polls. Just please use the question tab and just write your questions, and I will have a look at them while Johan is talking. And if there's a nice question that fits to the topic that he's talking about at that moment, I will try to slip them in. And but anyway, we have time for Q&A afterwards as well. And now, hand over to you, Johan.
Thank you, Pascal. Nice to meet you, everyone. So yeah, this talk is going to be about, it's the first time I'm doing this one, to be honest. I wanted to do something different and something about my career in technology. I've been in technology for the last 25 years. So obviously, I've been through different waves of technology, and I've seen quite a few things. I've been in many different roles, and I've learned quite a few things along this way. So that's what I want to share with you today. So first, my geographical journey, maybe. I was born in France, in the north of France. But then when I was 10 years, my parents moved close to Paris, and then I lived in Paris for a while. That was until 15 years ago. Then I moved to San Francisco. I come back to that to do a startup like everyone does over there. And about 8 years ago, I moved to Munich. I came back to that as well as an interesting transition in my life and professional career as well. All right, so let's get back to basics. So how everything started? Well, I think I've always been sort of a nerd, to be honest. And at some point, I wanted to have something to play with. I wanted to learn to program something. I forgot how that came up, maybe through a friend. I had some friends who had like computers, and I was fascinated by that. But my parents refused to actually buy me a full computer. So after a lot of negotiation, that's the best I could get. Hewlett Packard 48GX calculator. This device was meant for engineers, and I was only, like maybe 16, 17 when I got it. there was a lot of negotiation with my parents who were like, but you don't need that. I was like, yeah, I do. So I learned to program on this thing, which was a bit of an odd start, to be honest, because the core language is called RPL, Reverse Polish Language, which is sort of a cousin of Lisp. A lot of insane and stupid parentheses, as the acronym goes. Very powerful language, but kind of not your common way to start something in programming. And then I realized that it was a bit slow, and there was a store in Paris specialized in those calculators, and they were also like selling books. And a lot of engineers actually were hanging out in front of the store, and I could see what they were building, and I was amazed by how fast they could do things. And I was wondering, but like, how did you do that? Well, you know, like you need to lose assembly to learn assembly to do that. I was like, okay, I want to learn that. I had no idea what I was getting into. Obviously, assembly, for those who don't know, is really the lowest language you can talk to a machine. It's basically like very low-level code to talk directly to the CPU, to the memory, and so on. I bought a book and I gave myself this challenge to learn it. And it was tough because first I didn't have any support. I didn't know anyone in my surrounding who actually knew how to program in assembly or even how to use this machine, to be honest. And but I'm very stubborn. That's probably one of my core characteristics. And I managed to finally get through and to learn the core concept and to finally build application on this little device. And I had no idea about the degree of complexity that I was actually facing. I could not really gauge, you know, the difficulty of learning something like that. I just wanted to learn it, so I went for it without any assumptions, basically. And then I was in university and I did a first year in university in biology. At the time, that's what I wanted to do, and I figured very fast that actually this is not what I wanted to do. And since I've learned how to program, I was like, hey, maybe something in computer sciences could be interesting. So I went on and enjoyed a university, Paris 13, which is not the greatest university, but you know, I learned still a few things in a 2-year program so very practical, very hands-on to basically become a software developer. And it was interesting, but honestly, I didn't learn that much because I started very difficult, right? Like with assembly, and everything that came after that was sort of quite easy actually for me, without, you know, like wanting to sound presumptuous, but this is how it felt. So I was a bit bored, and I was looking for something to do to entertain myself, and I got into computer security. I was fascinated by network. It was the first time at university that I actually had access to a network, because at home I just had at that time a computer, but I had no idea about like how those machines actually talk together, and I really dig into that a lot. And doing that, I came across like the whole topic of security, how you secure a network, like what kind of informations are transiting, and I'm very curious. And eventually, I found something open on my university network, and I went pretty, you know, like deep inside the network without really knowing what I was doing back then. That it was actually a crime to do that. For me, it was just play, right? Like it was just exercising my skills, learning, and it almost got me into trouble because the one thing that I didn't necessarily anticipate back then was that it was a public research network. And so the intelligence services actually came to university, made some tapes of all the machines to inspect them, to see like who did that. I was not caught, and now I think there's prescription, so I can talk about it. but it was scary, of course, right? Like, but I learned a lot through this experience at the same time. That sometimes what you do is like borderline, and you need to be more aware. But I developed a lot of skills in networking, obviously. And the reason I wanted to talk about this particular event is that it opened some doors afterwards. Eventually, I got a first job. It was a weekend job, and I was working all weekend for this internet provider in France, which was called Club Internet. Club Internet was one of the largest ISP in France back then. It doesn't exist anymore, but back then it was pretty big, and I got my first job as a support person. Basically, I was helping people to connect to the internet, and then I was pretty good at it, and I'll get back to that. But I think that role helped me to develop a lot of empathy, because you have a lot of people who I was taking somewhere around 80 to 100 calls per day. That's massive. It's crushing. And you need to keep your calm, because those people are desperate, actually. Back then, it was still modem. You were still paying a lot for your connection. And people who could not access internet were calling like very angry most of the time, sometimes desperate. I had people crying. And I was actually pretty good at, making things work and reassuring them. I developed a lot of human skills in that role that I didn't necessarily see back then, right? Like it was more like something I was doing like by instinct, I guess. And since I was good at it, the second year I was a manager. So I was in charge of a team of about 25 people, and trying to help the most difficult cases and managing like those all those people. I was 19 back then, right? Like I was still very young. I didn't necessarily understood even like why I was thrown in this position, to be honest. But it taught me a lot. It taught me also a lot in terms of recruiting, because we were recruiting like crazy. And I learned like all the techniques to recruit people. And we had to screen on very interesting aspects that came later on in my life as well, when I was hiring or even screening startups as an investor. Things such as resilience to stress. Obviously, the job is very difficult. There's a lot of stress. You need to have people who can manage the stress and keep their cool when things go wrong. And so at that time, I already started to develop some techniques to assess the stress level of people when they are, faced with some situations. So we would ask like some pretty mean questions sometimes during interview, just to see, the behavior of people in front of us, to see if it could be a good fit or not. So that was a very interesting experience. And then I decided to continue university. I did that through sort of work and study program at the institution called CNAM in France, which is pretty well reputed, but I got bored very fast. And the only class I didn't get bored in was about distributed system. Obviously, I spent a lot of time like with network and trying to understand how they work. And then I went up one level, right? Like I was trying to understand how to develop applications that can talk to each other. And there was this class about distributed network with this professor who was also a researcher. I found this picture of him. I don't know what he has in his mouth, but he's a really funny guy, very, very smart. And we sort of like built a friendship. And one day we were having coffee, and he said, "Look, Johan, like I think you're just wasting your time here. Like you're an entrepreneur." And I was like, wait, like, what is that? What does that mean for me? I was like, you're going to do your own things. Like, I don't see you fitting really in in a day job. I don't see you like that. I think you have a lot of talent. You're gonna build something on your own. Don't know when, but I think it will happen. And that sort of stayed with me for quite some time. But I don't think I was really believing that, right? Like I don't come from. I was coming from very modest background. Clearly not entrepreneurs. My dad was in military. My mom was at home. We didn't talk about entrepreneurs at home. Neither did we talk about startups or things like that. It was a completely new universe for me. But at the same time, we were in the year 2000, roundabout, and it was the dot-com bubble, right? Like right before it crashed. And so I had the chance to work in a few companies, and for the next 10 years, essentially, like I tried many things. Sometimes I just stayed 2 weeks in a company, didn't like it, moved to the next one. And my parents thought that I was just crazy. Obviously, like the salaries back then were like totally crazy because it was a dot-com bubble, right? And I was earning more than my dad, even though I just started my career. And I had this great chance to be able to move wherever I want because I was wanted, right? Like I was already like I had the skills of a software architect, and I got hired for that. Sort of bypassing, like the more software engineering deep side or hands-on side. I was still very hands-on, obviously, but very passionate about architecture and the aesthetic of things. I think that's another thing that followed me like all my life. I love design. I love not only in things, but as you can see, I have a very nice lamp behind me, but also in how software is actually built. And that made me try to understand like what are the best way to build software, how do you scale it, how do you make it beautiful, right? And that followed me for until now, I would say. But those 10 years were just a mess of experience, let's call it that way, where I learned quite a few things, right? Like I learned to become fairly good software engineer, I would say. I worked in many different industries. I worked in gaming. I worked in the travel industry. I worked in the copyright industry. Building, having a lot of autonomy most of the time and building things pretty much the way I wanted to build them. And I think I was quite lucky about that. But I was also making sure that I had this autonomy and realizing that autonomy was very important for me. I thought back about what my teacher told me about becoming an entrepreneur. It started to grow in me, right? And eventually, I wanted to build a company. I had some ideas, and a good friend of mine introduced me to one of his investors. And I was freaked out, right? Like I tried to pitch my idea, didn't really work that well. I had no idea how to pitch something. I was very technical. I had no idea about business. But eventually this guy at some point interrupted me and said, "Hey, I also have an idea. Like, this is the idea. Like I'd like to build sort of Twitter, but in video." I was like, that sounds interesting. And I knew the guy actually because he was one of the figure of internet, like of startup in France, of entrepreneurship. He bought some companies, he sold some, he had quite a few exits. He was quite a figure in the ecosystem back then. And I said, let's do it. Let's go crazy and let's say yes. I had no idea what I was expecting, right? And then you say, hey, one more thing, actually, if you want to join, you're gonna have to move to San Francisco. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was, I called my partner and I asked about the potentiality of us moving to San Francisco, and she was quite excited. And so basically in half an hour, my life changed, right? Like after this meeting. I was ready to start something with someone I had no idea about, by the way, and moving to another country like over the ocean. And that's how I ended up in San Francisco building a company, again, like everyone does over there, right? And that was a company. So it was called Seismic. It was essentially a Twitter in video, as I said before. It was a big Flash application. It was, pretty difficult to maintain. I was a CTO for the company and co-founder. And we had a very weird trajectory, I have to say. So maybe to reflect on that, like sometimes you need to follow your gut feeling, right? Like sometimes you will meet people who will tell you something or give you an opportunity. And sometimes it's important to follow it, even if it's scary. I was scared to death to do that. But I was also very excited because I knew it could bring me somewhere else. It could bring me to some other place that I had no idea about and develop some skills that I didn't know, right? So coming back to the unusual trajectory, we raised 6 million the first week I started, which is unusual. And that led to also a bunch of other problems, like we don't have time for that, but it was a very wild ride. Our company was very well known in the ecosystem. We had really good investors. We had Atomico Ventures as investors, at the Skype founders. We had Michael Harrington from TechCrunch. We were every 2 weeks literally on TechCrunch, which was a lot of pressure for me. It was my first role in this position. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had to keep it up and to make things work, right? So maybe a few things that I learned along the way doing Seismic. I've realized that building a strong network is fundamental, right? Like I've seen I think the biggest skills of my CEO was his ability to build strong network. And that's how we raised 6 million so early. Of course, he had a track record as well, but he had really, really good connections. And those connections opened many, many doors. And that's something that I kept with me and that I cherish and developed. I was not good at that back then. And I'm still an introvert. And as an introvert, it's difficult sometimes to go and talk to people and build this network. But I watched him doing that, and I was trying to emulate what he was doing and to pretty good, results. Another thing that I learned, it's entrepreneurship. It's a very lonely journey. You're alone with your fear. Like it's difficult to talk about it because you don't want to show weakness. Everyone, particularly in Silicon Valley, everyone crush it, right? Like they think they do, or they pretend they do at least. In fact, not so many do. And everyone is afraid to fail, like every entrepreneur, I think. But that leaves a lot of loneliness, particularly as you spend your life building a company and you neglect your friends, family, and so on, which you should not, obviously. Another thing that I learned is that having an impact is very important for me. When I built Seismic, it was about community, and community has become like something very important in my life. And essentially, through building community, I realized that I could have a massive impact on people. To give you an example, like when we decided to actually pivot the company from being a video company to a social media management company, so moving from community to more like a tool. I received some emails which were like heartbreaking, and also made me realize the impact we had building this community through technology. People telling me you cannot close it because it saved my life. I was about to make a big mistake, and I found this community, and the reason I'm still here is because they are here, and it's because of Sysmic. So please don't close it. So that was, of course, it leaves a trust on you, and you start seeing things through different angles. Another thing that an advice actually that I got from one of my mentors was actually my landlord. It was this lady who had an amazing career working with Steve Jobs, and then working with Andy Grove at Intel as a worldwide managing director. And she kind of like tried to get me under her wing and give me some advice, because she knew what I would be going through. And one of these advice that, of course, I didn't follow back then, but I found it in my notes, in the notebooks years afterwards, was manage your time. Manage your energy. Actually, I got it wrong on this one. Manage your energy, not your time. So that's a river that I got here. And that stuck with me since then, right? Like I think we have a tendency to see our productivity through the time we invest in it. But in my experience, particularly experiencing burnout, you realize that actually when you are in a reactive mode all the time, and when you don't sleep too much, I was sleeping about 4 hours per night for many years. And the rest of the time I was just working, including weekends. I took 10 days of vacation in 4 years. And that was just not healthy. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't have a clear mind, right? Like, and because I thought that the more time I will invest, the more successful I will be. But I was very, very far from the truth. So that's a few nuggets from that time. And then we decided to move to Munich. I had a kid, and we wanted to do something else. We wanted to get back closer to the family. San Francisco changed also a lot. It was very expensive. And kids, like they have a tendency to also make you see things under a different lens. So here we come in Munich, and for me it was a setback, to be honest. The first year was extremely tough. I didn't know what to do. I looked for CTO roles, but I couldn't find anything appealing. I didn't even know if that's what I wanted to do, because I got burned out by that pretty massively. So I just gave myself some time, even though it was a bit of a stretch, even financially. The company got acquired, by the way. The company I got acquired. It was not a massive financial success. It's still an acquisition, which is always nice. But then, yeah, I had to do something. So I took what I learned in San Francisco, that building a network is important. And I had no network in Munich. So I went pretty naive about that. And that's something that I've done all my life. I think I've been pretty naive about things. And I don't think naivety is necessarily like, something bad. I think sometimes it can make you see things in a different way. And I started to organize meetups to meet people, technical meetups. And I gathered, 20 people on the first one, 40 on the next one, and 100 at some point. And then I got invited to a company to host those meetups. And they basically asked me if I would be interested to do that for a paycheck. And I was like, that sounds actually pretty cool. It's very different from what I've done before. I felt that in San Francisco, I learned this super skill, super power of building community, being able to get outside of my introversion, being able to connect with people, to connect people together. And that's what I wanted to do, actually. And I realized also that Germans are not necessarily good at it. So I was feeling more comfortable, right, in doing that. So instead of, I shifted my mindset from, this is a setback in my career to maybe it's a new opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's try it, right? And that's something that I've been doing, most of my life, being quite opportunistic about things and keeping an open mind, I guess. So I started to do that to organize a lot of community events. And I took a lot of pleasure doing that. It was a great experience bringing all those people together, but more importantly, I also built a great network, right? Like people started to know me. That's a guy who organized a meetup. That's a guy with a crazy hair who wear like flower pants on stage. And that was not enough for me. I wanted to do something bigger. And this company I was working for called Stylight, they had sort of like a mini conference, and I was like, hey, let's make something out of that. That's what I did with it. I gathered, like the last year I organized it, I gathered more than 1,400 people in Munich. That's me on stage here introducing the conference to those people. And that was, again, another experience. Like that was a way for me to push myself towards like what I've done before, to experience new things, to again build this crazy network that I was sure like would lead somewhere some days. At the same time, I was starting to get bored because there's so much you can do, building a bigger conference every year, and it's a lot of work. I was spending more and more of my time building that. It was pretty much just myself and another person in charge of the logistics. So again, I had like full autonomy, which I really enjoyed because I need to have a sort of pressure on my shoulders to achieve things. And eventually I built also a great team of volunteers who followed me on this mission. And one of those volunteers, Manuel, one time came to me and said, hey, Johan, Techstars? Yeah, I've heard about them, this accelerator network, right? Yeah. And he has been through Techstars before as a company. And he told me, they're actually opening a program in Munich. I think you'd be a great fit for that. And I was not sure, to be honest. I've always wanted to do investment, to do some investment, and to eventually maybe become an investor one day. But I didn't know it would come so soon. And I said, yeah, let's try it, as I always do. And that brought me to Techstars. But first, maybe a few words on what I learned, during my time at Stylight as a tech evangelist. That was the name, the role I had there, which means nothing and everything, I guess. But it's a pretty cool name, I guess. A few things. So, be open to change, right? Like sometimes you don't expect that your career will change, and sometimes it's just about embracing that and not resisting it. Starting some things that you like or need, like when I started to do meetups, I did that out of need, but also because I like to build community. I like to bring people together. I've always liked to do that. And somehow that led me to do that, right? To build more communities and a conference. I learned to speak on a stage as well. As an introvert, it's difficult. It's still something that I keep learning. But I definitely developed some skills there. And again, I think since I was in San Francisco before, like I had a sort of a self-confidence that helped me in doing that. As I said before, sometimes setbacks can be great opportunities. So it's just about, trying to look deeper into it instead of seeing it in a negative way. It's also a lot about your mindset, of course. And connecting people is always a good thing. I think that's another thing that I've learned throughout my career. The more people you connect, the more things will come out of that, right? Like sometimes it's going to be a nice email about how, connection was great. Sometimes it's like changing. You connect someone to someone else, like some people did for me in the past, and it will just change your life, right? So that's something I would highly encourage you to do as well, connecting people wherever you can. If you know someone could be like a good match with someone else, do it, right? Like if you think that two people would have a nice discussion together, if they would know each other, do it. So fast forward, I'm an investor now at Techstars. Not now, I'm not anymore, but that was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I had a huge imposter syndrome. I think that's another learning that I have acquired from those years. Every time I've started something new, the imposter syndrome kicks back in, right? It's difficult sometimes to manage it, but I have a tendency to trust that things will go right and to have faith basically in the future. But this time I did it differently. I actually found some mentors, and I was very open with my feeling about my fears, about my insecurities. I remember being in this in this meeting with a lot of other managing directors from Techstars, and they had, before like great investors career, and I was the only one who was coming from tech really, and who had no idea about investment, and that was difficult on me. But again, I chose to talk about it, and I learned a lot of very interesting things that gave me confidence that, yeah, maybe actually that could work, right? And it was too late anyway, so I had to do it. So I did it, and I learned a lot of great things out of that. One of them, I think, is that it's important to choose a role that match your core beliefs, right? Like Techstars has this motto of give first, which means pay it forward. Do something good for others without expecting something in return. And that, I've been applying like all my career, I have to say. And a lot of good things have emerged from that by just pure act of kindness, I would say. Again, I really enjoyed that time when I was at Techstars because it was very close to what I like to do, helping founders, helping people to achieve their dreams. So what did I learn? Well, I learned that I really love entrepreneurs. I knew that already, but I was in a different position now. I was the one teaching them, right? I was the one sharing my knowledge, sharing my experience, sharing my mistakes to help them, avoid those mistakes themselves. I learned that I really do love to help people in general. Again, that paying it forwards, is something that will always bring some good things. You never know when, but it will. And I also learned that empathy and soft skills are very fundamental as well. Yet they are very underrated, I would say. But entrepreneurs, as I've experienced, are lonely. They are full of fear, and they need people who can help them to face their fears, and people who trust in them, right? Who have faith in them, sometimes more than they do themselves. So that was a wonderful experience, and then my program closed because there was COVID, and my corporate partner had some internal changes. And I was sad, to be honest, because I really love what I was doing. I see that Misha is in the room. He was one of the people who I actually brought in Munich from Korea because I invested in his company, and I became a great friend. So again, there's a lot of serendipity in those things when you put your heart into it and when you get close to people. But once my program closed, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to reinvent myself again. I love this quote from Bukowski. It's a pretty well-known poem that he wrote about inventing yourself and then reinventing yourself and keep doing it, right? Because it's important to have joy in life, I would say. And so fast forward about 2 years ago, my corporate partner asked me to look at a deal they were working on and asked me if I could do like a technical due diligence on the companies they were maybe thinking of investing in. So I did that. I had no idea if I would do a good job, but yeah, I was like, let's try it. And and since then, I've been doing that as a freelance, right? For the last 2 years. There's been some ups and downs, but again, I've relied heavily on my network to do that, and I'm pretty good stage now in what I do as a freelance. I also wrote a guide, which was a huge challenge for me because I've tried to write books before, but never managed to finish it. I finished this one, which is a guide about how to survive tech due diligence, which was published by Circle CI last year. And now the question is, what next for me, right? I don't know. What I know is that I've stacked up a lot of things, a lot of skills in my life, and every thing that I've stacked up contribute to the next thing. So I learned management, like managing people and having empathy, like very early on, that helped me to build a company and manage a team of engineers. I had almost 60 engineers at some point. And this experience of entrepreneurship taught me a lot in what it means to build a company. And then as a tech evangelist, I use those skills that I've learned, but in a different way, right? Not as a CTO anymore, but in different context, trying to develop some skills that I started to develop as a CTO, like public speaking and connecting people and so on. And then growing this fabulous network, right? Which was one of the prerequisites to get into Techstars. They have two prerequisites: having a big network, having been a former entrepreneur, which makes sense if you want to teach other entrepreneurs. So everything sort of connects, right? Like there's this famous quotes from Steve Jobs saying that you can only connect the dots looking backward and not forward. And I think that's very true. But you need to trust the future, right? You need to have faith in yourself or in something to move on and do other things, even when it's very uncomfortable. And I think being uncomfortable is something good because that's where you learn, right? When I feel that I'm too comfortable somewhere, I change. Because first I get bored, but more importantly, I don't feel that I'm learning anymore, and I need to do something else that most likely will rely on the skills that I've acquired before to do my next role. So when I did this transition to become like a technology auditor for VCs, so essentially when there's a deal happening, investors contact me, ask me if I can review the technology of a company and give my advice to the company, but also like giving my go no go to the investor. And for doing that, you need a lot of skills, right? You need to be good technically speaking, but also humanly speaking. You need to, because you talk to people, you need to be good at reading them, knowing if potentially they lie to you, or if they have great skills to do what they are supposed to do as CTOs, or what can they improve in doing that. I'm still very involved, by the way, in the Techstars ecosystem because I love it. I love to help founders. I help about 100 CTOs per year as a CTO in residence in many, many programs. I help those people to grow and to avoid the mistakes that I've done, because I think it's important. That's how you build the next generation. So some more thoughts to conclude maybe. Follow your guts sometimes, like particularly when it feels uncomfortable, good things will happen. And believe that things will align properly. Stack your skills, right? Each new skill that you learn, you're going to be able to use it and to compound it in your next role or in your next gig. I've learned that empathy and communication are probably the best skills you can build and you can develop, and there's always room for development in there. But being able to communicate to people in the proper way, to say what you have to say, to not fall into the trap of conflict avoidance or fake harmony and things like that is very important. Learning how to build trust with people is very important. And to build trust, you need to be vulnerable, right? And that's also something I've learned during my career, that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a sign of courage to me, to say, yeah, I failed many, many times. I did a lot of fuck up. And that's how you learn. There's no shortcut to it. You need to do the you need to do the errors to not be afraid to do errors to learn. The imposter syndrome is always real. Every new role that I've been into, I've thought about myself. But I've also learned that it's okay to doubt yourself. It doesn't mean that you should not do it. I think it's a mechanism of the brain to protect you. But you can go over it. You can override it. It's okay to fail, as I said. You need to learn from it and talk about it openly and share this great experience that you acquired. Building a great network, as I said, that is an asset that will follow you all your life. And be kind with the others. As I said, random act of kindness can go a really long way. At the end of the day, it's your story, right? It's not anyone else's story. So sometimes people are trapped in dogma, right? Like they think they need to do this or that because that's how the society sort of push them into. I've never really felt that way. I've always wanted to do my own things, and I'm very glad that my teacher, in 20 plus years ago, told me that I'd be an entrepreneur one day. Find those people who are the one who believe in you, because with that you can achieve great things, I believe. And I try to live my life as I give you on this quote from Alan Watts. We sort of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. The thing that was to get to that end, success or whatever it is, or maybe heaven after you're there. But we missed the point the whole way along, that it was a musical thing and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played. And to me, it means that you need to have fun in what you do. You should. I've never seen my life with an end goal. I keep an open mind and I ride the wave, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you. And I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Strangely, you can't see me anymore. You can just see my background. Nevertheless, thank you so much for all these insights. It's really cool. And I always have to, when I meet Johan, I always think about the first encounter with him, and what really stuck to my mind till today is the first thing that you said to me after introducing each other was actually asking me, how can I help you? And I was like, what does he want from me? And because it was really strange that a total stranger asks you as the first thing after introducing yourself, okay, what do you do? How can I help you? And this giving first mentality has stuck with me ever since, and I'm really grateful for that. And this is actually something that I applied myself a lot of times, and you always get this nice feedback from the people that they're really like, okay, why are you asking? And if you explain to them, everyone is like, yeah, that totally makes sense, and it's a really nice thing to do, really nice mindset, and this is yeah, actually something that stuck to my mind till today. So really thankful for that, and yeah, thanks for all these great insights. And now to all the listeners, do you have any more questions you would like to ask Johan? Then just let us know. Just type it in the chat or in the questions tab. Or is everyone already exhausted from, I don't know how much degrees you guys have. Here it's around 33, so that's still okay. Okay, here we have a question. Mihai, I hope I pronounced it correctly, is asking, I'm also starting on the CTO entrepreneurial journey. Have you energy for another guy to mentor?
Sure, always.
Just get in touch with him. You can find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll drop my email in there. So,
what is the single best hack to get the first clients as a freelancer?
I would say the network journey. That's at least how I've done it and how I still operate to this day. I don't really promote myself that much because like most of my customers actually come from the network. I think from the moment you do, you talk about what you're doing, and I have a tendency to do that quite a lot, right? Like when I started on this journey of freelancing, I called a lot of people to catch up and tell them about like what I'm doing now and if they know anyone who could need those services. And eventually, one bring another and bring another, and then my names, circulate in some investors' WhatsApp groups, and that's basically how I find customers. Yeah. So build your network, I would say, and I think things will follow.
Very good. The question regarding the slides, can we share them afterwards?
Of course, yeah.
Perfect. That was pretty easy. Good.
Thank you, Mihai. See, that's the kind of things that I love to I love to read.
Really nice. Yeah. Any more questions? What's your experience with cold outreach through LinkedIn? Oh, really, really interesting.
I've never tried it, to be honest. But recently, I was talking to another guy who also built like a tech DD company, and I was asking him about how does he find clients, right? Because I only do through my network, but maybe there are other ways. And he actually told me that reaching out directly works quite well, and you need to personalize your messages, right? You need to. It should not feel like a copy paste, obviously. So I think you need to refer always to some things that you know about them, or try to get a warm connection to someone. I think getting warm connection can go a long way as well, right? Like if you, I don't know, if you dream of like working in whatever company, or if you dream to have like, particular company as a customer, try to find a way in, right? Like try to find someone who can hook you up with someone there, or several people, and build from that, right? I think that could be one way to do it.
Yeah, I would be the same answer from my side, because I mean, you probably the same with you. Everyone gets so many messages on LinkedIn, and it's always, as you say, even if it has your name in the approach saying hi Pascal, then I still know, okay, this reads totally like a copy paste and just automatic message. What you can do, and this is actually a trick that I don't know where I heard or learned about it, is you could send with the message a photo or a video where you hold a sign in front of you with the name of the person that you're trying to talk to, because it shows that it's a personal thing and it costs you a little bit of effort. So the person sees that you put an effort into reaching out to this person. So apparently this person is important to you for whatever reason. And if you have a real benefit or a real value that you can bring to this person, then hopefully you get it through the video or whatever you're telling them. So this could be a nice trick to find out if cold outreach is working.
I think overall, like being creative always help, right? Like it always help you to get above the crowd, basically. Sometimes even if it's like, cheesy or whatever, like I think it's about catching the attention of the person. And I think their creativity is important.
And for sure, having a real value. So if you're just spamming someone and you don't even know if that's the right person to talk to or if it's important for this person, you're just wasting their time, their energy. As you said, focus your energy. And you don't want the same being done with you. So be respectful for the time of others. But if you really think that you have a real value for them, as you also said, give them their value, show them your value that you can bring to them, and then see if it's a real value. And if it's a real value, they will probably come for you. So I always prefer this give first instead of a hard sales tactic. And you have to be a real salesperson to do cold outreach for sure, especially in person. I hate it and I wouldn't do it for money. And but that's everyone's choice, own your choices. And we have one last question. What is the best way to choose a new technology to learn?
I would say learn some things that you enjoy doing first, because that's the best way to get good at it and then to get paid for it, right? Of course, there are technologies that are more trendy than others. So you can potentially, if you don't have any like particular passion for a given technology, you can use that as well and sort of like ride the different trends that happens. If you look in the industry right now, like if you do front end, like you're gonna do some React. Don't learn all frameworks, right? Like learn what's current. But even if you learn something fairly exotic and you get really good at it, there's probably someone somewhere who needs those skills. That is for sure, provided that you're good at it again.
And I also posted a link in the comments. Maybe it's some inspiration on new technologies. That's our way how we, exactly as you said, Johan, where we have a look. It's a study that we did in last year to have a look what is trending, what are trending technologies, what are growing technologies, what are the ones where we see, okay, they are more threatened because not so many people asking for these skills, because it's also something that we get asked a lot in terms of our freelancers saying, what do I do if I'm really good at a technology that is more or less vanishing from being used anymore? This is a nice way to see, oh, there's someone looking for skills actually. That I totally forgot to mention. If you're a startup founder, CTO, whoever, you can find great freelance talents on Malt as well. You don't have to be a freelancer, so check it out if you need talent. Freelancers are oftentimes a great way to fill the gaps if you're in deep need of special skills.
Brilliant.
Good. So if there aren't any other questions, I would say, Johan, many thanks for your time, for your insights, for sharing all your thoughts, for giving first, and hopefully you'll receive more and more in the future.
I'm sure.
So everyone, have a really nice evening. Enjoy the sun, enjoy the good weather, and see you hopefully soon in the next webinar. Maybe let's talk about that later, Johan. Maybe in a live workshop with you here in Munich. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Cool. Thank you everyone for joining. I will still leave the room a little bit open, but you can just leave. I'm just finishing up, and yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for taking the time, Johan, and see you soon, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for having me, Pascal.
Pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.